So, do you have a few minutes to talk halacha?
Sure.
Great, let's go. Let's talk halacha, more specifically Shabbos. Thank God for that day of week that we have, that we can rest, we can detox from everything around us and really emphasize on ourselves, our family, Torah, and our Jewish life. But Shabbos comes with a lot of rules. When we talk about halacha of Shabbos, I think we should go all the way back to where everything starts from. Where do the rules of Shabbos actually begin?
Well, it all starts very famously with the 10 Commandments. The fifth of the 10 Commandments is to keep Shabbos. What does it mean to keep Shabbos? That's pretty vague. So we have to take a look a little more closely. So what does it tell us in the Torah? What does God say? Lo tasa kol malacha. Don't do any malacha. Don't do any work. Well, that too is pretty vague. That's going to be our topic. But first, perhaps a little bit of context.
The context. So when we talk about the 10 Commandments, we know we have two different 10 Commandments. We have the ones in Parshas Yisro and we have the ones in Parshas Bet Chanan, all the way at the end in Sefer Dvarim. And with Shabbos, there's a very major difference in the writing, but apparently not in the actual giving of the Torah. We say Shama v'Zachor b'dibur echad ne'emru, and both of them teach us different aspects of the rules of Shabbos.
That's right. There are two mitzvahs of Shabbos. There's Zachor and Shamar. They're said together. So what's the idea that they're said together? What are these two different mitzvahs? So the Gemara tells us that Zachor is to make Kiddush and Shamar is to refrain from doing Malacha. How do they go together exactly? What's the idea? What's the combination? Rav Soloveitchik explained very beautifully that they all come together to get us to the goal of what Shabbos is all about. Shabbos is about having a day that is completely separate from the rest of the week. It's a day of Kedusha. We say in Havdalah, Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. We're Mikadesh HaShabbos when we say Kiddush. We sanctify the day of Shabbos. It's a day that's very different. What's the context? What's the atmosphere for that day that's very different? Well, the atmosphere starts with the malachos, with the things that you're not allowed to do. And that's what we're going to talk about. There's also a lot to talk about what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to be active. But the first step is knowing the atmosphere we're supposed to be in. And that is what we cannot do. We know those rules, as you mentioned. The important idea Rav Soloveitchik teaches us is that all those rules that we're about to talk about of what not to do on Shabbos are all ultimately to bring us to the same Zachar v'Shamar b'Dibur Echad, to that atmosphere of creating this special, unique day, this day of holiness that's separate and distinct from the rest of the week.
You mentioned the malachos, what we're not allowed to do on Shabbos. Obviously, that originates also somewhere in the Torah and is a meaning for all of the malachos and what's behind them. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more. Where do these malachos come from?
Torah, like we said before, doesn't tell us much because the Torah just says, don't do malacha. But we have a Torah Sheba'al Peh, as we know, and we have a Mishnah in the 7th parak of Masechah Shabbos, which gives us the list of the 39 malachos, listed one by one. There's a connection between Shabbos and the building of the Mishkan. In the Midbar, when they didn't have the Beis HaMikdash, they had a temporary Mishkan. The mitzvah of Shabbos is placed right next to the mitzvah of building the Mishkan. And Rashi in the Gemara notes that it's the juxtaposition between one of the times that Shabbos is mentioned in the Torah together or next to the building of the Mishkan, that we have to look at the building of the Mishkan as the source for what we're not allowed to do on Shabbos. And that's where we get the idea that all of the actions that were necessary to prepare the Mishkan in the Midbar, those are the actions that are now formed the Lamed Tes Malachos, the 39 categories of Malacha that are prohibited on Shabbos.
Very interesting what you're saying. Intrinsically, the Malachos of Shabbos are connected to the Mishkan. You mentioned Masechet Shabbos. The interesting thing about Masechet Shabbos, it starts Davka with what seems to be the least malacha of them all, which is bringing in and out objects from different domains, which seems to be the least of an actual work or actual labor done by people. However, that is where Masechet Shabbos starts from. And Hilchos Shabbos actually explains that this is something very fundamental about Shabbos and about what Shabbos is. Shabbos is about staying at home with your family. It's about being with your family, being in your place, as we say, recharging. Nowadays, we have our cell phones with us, and when our cell phone is about to die, we quickly look for its home. We look for its charger. We look to charge it up, because in order to charge, you have to go back to where your base is, to where your family is, to where your home is. And that's where all the Halacha Shabbos come into play, is by making sure that we as families, we stay together and we stay connected to each other and manage to cut ourselves off from the world around us. Give us that day of rest from everything that's going on in our lives so that we can focus internally on ourselves and on our families.
You mentioned, Tuvia, that Shabbos starts with Hotzah, which is going from inside to outside, outside to inside, and you're not really doing anything. 1 second. Why is it actually prohibited? What's the problem? Did you create something? Malacha, usually you do something, you accomplish something. What did you accomplish here? Years ago, when we were in yeshiva together, actually, Reuven and Tuvia Shlita explained the following. He said that, no, really something did happen. When you were inside and you moved outside, you're in a totally different place. The fact that you're in a totally different place, that's a big change. The atmosphere you're in, the things you're around, that impacts you. So it's completely different when you're inside, now you're outside, or when you're outside, you moved inside. And that's like you were just saying. The atmosphere that you're in on Shabbos, that's huge. And the idea on Shabbos is to create an atmosphere of Kedusha in your home. And if you leave that Kedusha and you go outside, well, now you're in a totally different place. And that's a malacha. You've actually accomplished something. You've done something significant by going from inside to outside. And what our job every Shabbos is to create that atmosphere of holiness in our home. Our home is really, like you said, the place to do that. And so the connection between Mishkan and Shabbos is very strong.
That's beautiful. That's amazing, really, how the Mishkan as our holiest home for us Jewish people also combines the Shabbos, our holiest day, to make us better people and better at what we do in our day-to-day lives. So we know we have Avot and we have Toladot. Talk to me a little bit about that, about the differences between the Avot and Toladot.
The Gemara has a drasha to tell us that we have a concept that it's not only Avos Melachos, 39 categories like we mentioned, but we also have Toldos. We have secondary categories that are derived or that stem from those Avos, those 39 categories of Malacha. Now, is there any difference between them? So the Gemara says that practically there's no difference. An Av and a Toldos are prohibited in the Torah. The difference is that one of them was in the Mishkan and the Toldos were not in the Mishkan, but they were similar to the things that were done in the Mishkan. There is a difference about the number of karbanos, but that's not so relevant nowadays. Interestingly, though, we may find differences in other areas of halacha, but it does behoove us when we're learning Mekoros Shabbos and we're learning about the malachos to understand what are the differences between avos and tolos and what is what.
So do we have a list of all these tolados? Do we know what they are?
That would be easy. That'd be nice if the Gemara gave us a list. Unfortunately, the Gemara gives us examples here and there, but not a full list. You got to study each one really, really well to understand what it's all about, what's the essence of the malacha of those 39 categories. Once you have that essence, you can figure out what else should be included.
Thank you for the introduction. Like you started off saying, there's some wonderful things that we have to do in Shabbos, and there's some wonderful things that we're not allowed to do in Shabbos. We're going to start talking about the things we are not supposed to do, and please God, from there we'll lead on in the future to the things that we are supposed to do on Shabbos. And I'm super looking forward to continue these talks every week, please God.
Looking forward as well. It's going to be great.
Amazing. Thank you for your time.
Tuvia, anytime. It's great to talk and learning and great to talk about Shabbos. It's the most exciting day of the week.
Couldn't agree more. We'll talk next week, please.